So we're going to look at functions. I'm going to break this up into several videos. There's 70 slides, and we only have time with 8 minutes left probably to get down through func expressions, which, hey, that just sounds cool. But there's going to be some cool stuff here. Func expressions, closure, returning a func, callbacks, recursion, which is going to lead some cool exercises, something called defer, and then talk about the stack. And you should already probably know that, but it'll be good for me to talk about so I can continue reinforcing my learning. And so that's what's coming up with functions. And all this other stuff like callbacks, like functional programming like Lisp and Haskell, that's not so much Go style. But you can do that stuff, but it's just easier just to do things with, like, Go is really about making things clear and easy to read as opposed to clever and complex. And, if you have to write a little bit more code so it's clear, great, write a little bit more code, right? Like, you don't need to make things totally abstract and confusing. And so not so much a functional programming style, but you can do that stuff, and so we'll look at it. So functions in Go are types, and functions behave as types in Go. Use like any other type. You could declare functions as a variable, and you could pass functions around just as you'd pass types around. So you could have them as arguments or return them from a function. You could pass functions just like any other argument or parameter. Pass them into functions as arguments, return them from functions. You could declare functions inside other functions. And that's similar to JavaScript. And so, like, when we talk about concurrency, and in this concurrency example up here, and the PS here stands for Pluralsight. I just want to be clear, that's not my original genius code. And this concurrency is Caleb Doxy, right? And I didn't want to put Pluralsight in there just in case somebody's Googling. It's like I'm giving a little bit of protection to them selling their course and making people buy not only the course but the code. You actually have to pay a little bit more to get the code. I hope I didn't just like totally. I hope I'm not listening to this in court in like a year and a half or something. It's like, I'm a teacher. Come on, isn't there that thing with intellectual property about like I don't know, academic use or something? And so anyhow, you come in here, somewhere in here that he uses like anonymous self-executing functions, right? And oh, okay, you could do that with Go. So here's a function, and just no duh, but just in case people are watching this. But func main is the entry point for your program. And so there's a function, func, and then the function name, and then the parentheses are the arguments that it would take, or the parameters you're defining. That's saying the same thing. And so there is where the parameters go, and there's arguments. So that's the difference between those words. Parameter is when you're declaring the function, which you're saying, what's it going to take, and arguments when you're passing in. And to execute a function, obviously you need the parentheses. So if I just said greeting, that wouldn't execute it, but here I'm executing it, and it's not taking any arguments. And here you could give it multiple parameters. And I could do that thing Daniel was just talking about where each, they're both strings, and so I don't have to declare string after, or specify the type after each one. I could just specify it after, it just looks down the line. If it doesn't find its type, it says it takes whatever the first type it finds. And so here that's where you put the return. So that's a single return. I'm returning a string. And here I'm using sprint, right? So we were wondering how would you use sprint? And so I'm actually creating a string, right, with print, and I'm combining first and last name into one string. And you could name your return, so I gave it the name S. And then I could assign it S and just hit return, and it knows to return that.
I think you may not even need the return anymore if you do that.
Oh, really?
Not sure.
I have a feeling you will know by next Tuesday. And multiple returns. And then variadic, so that's the params because the dots are in front. And I'm passing in, a varied number of floats. And then I could also do a slice of floats and do variadic arguments, dots afterwards. And parameter name does not have to match argument name. There's a couple people had questions about that at boot camp, so I just thought I'd throw that in. That should be pretty self-evident to you at this point in your career. So then there's some exercises. Write a function, which, so you're actually getting into some things. And there's the solution to the exercise. You're actually going to have to type that one since it's a screenshot. And write a function with one variadic parameter that finds the greatest number in a list of numbers. And that comes from Caleb's book. And here's a solution to that. And bad coding practice, variable shadowing, right? So how many people are not aware of variable shadowing? This game's called The Truth Will Save You. Raise your hand. Okay, so variable shadowing is like, here I have a function named max, right? And then I can print my function, right? Print line max, and it gives me that. What is that?
Memory address.
It's a memory address? All right. It's just kind of a weird number, 2000. And then I'm taking and I'm creating a new variable max, and I'm assigning it to the results from the function running. So that's going to give me an int, right? And then I'm going to format print line max, so that there's the value. But so that's shadowing because I took something which was assigned to max, and that was originally a function, right? And now I'm setting it equal to an int, and so. I couldn't do this, right? I couldn't now run the function max again because max is no longer a function, it's now an int, right? So that's bad practice. I mean, it's kind of like, I'm even explaining it, I'm like, this is stupid, or it's not easy to explain, right? Obviously, that's variable shadowing, but I've seen that too in Python, I think, or another one. All right, so we'll pick up with function expressions, but just a preview of a function expression. So setting it equal to a variable. Setting a variable equal to a function. So here I am setting greeting equal to a function, and I'm doing that inside of a function. So that's a functional expression. All right, we'll see you guys Tuesday. Do your homework up through presentation 15.